Hello and welcome to this tutorial. My name is Arthur Whitehead, and today what I want to show you is how I lit my interior scene using the physical light and some global illumination settings inside Cinema 4D. Interior lighting is something I generally struggle with. It's very hard for me to do, and to get a great render out of it, it's not very easy for me. I've tried different methods of using multiple lights. I've gone up to 8 once at one time, and it looked okay in the scene that I'm showing you right now. It wasn't so much the lighting, but the actual textures and the models which made the scene look bad, but the render times are extremely long for that. So today what I want to show you is how I used one physical light and came out with this amazing render. A lot of it has to do with the colors that I'm using in my scene and the textures, and as well as the models of the scene and how I composited it in the end. But the physical light is pretty much what made the scene. If there wasn't the physical light, it would have broken the scene. And so I'm going to try and show you basically the steps I took to get this physical light to light the scene beautifully. And it's a very easy technique which you can use if you want to show your clients sample renders and things like that. So yeah, we're going to start from the beginning. I've reset my render settings. Here we have our old, I have a saved version of the render settings here. And I've reset the render settings. And I'm going to try and start off where you guys are starting off. So I'm going to completely remove the sky. And I'm going to delete the null as well. And I've sort of optimized the scene a bit towards the tutorial. The scene could be optimized a lot more, but the renders will only be about 2 minutes long for me at least. I am using team render, so I'm rendering with 3 different computers, so it may be a bit longer for you. I was thinking about putting this project online so you guys could use it for as reference, but I don't really know much about that, and I think that'll just complicate things. So can't make any promises on that, but this is for my portfolio website, which is arthurwhitehead.com. It is brand new. It actually only came up today, so there's only 2 projects on it right now, and I'm still tweaking everything and making everything look nice. So you can go over there and check out my 2 projects. There should be a lot more coming up in the future, and you can see what that's like. But yeah, we're gonna get right into the tutorial now. So if I do out a quick render, let's first get into our render settings. Let's optimize it a bit first, and then we'll do out some quick renders. So usually I just switch to physical render automatically. I haven't used the standard render in a long time. The only time I used it is when I was rendering out RPF files, because it's just a bit faster that way, and RPF files don't work with team render. I do not know why, but that's on another subject. So we're going to untick save. We're going to change this to PNG. And we're going to untick include sound, and then we're going to do first, before we do that, I usually, for the final render of the scene, I use 1920 by 900. That's the aspect ratio I went for. Film, I usually go for 0.8 words. I usually go for 804 for film, and for this one I went for 900, and sometimes I even go to 1000. And if I'm going for normal standard, I'll just go 1080p. But for this one I went 900, and I'm going to click lock ratio, and then I'm going to delete the 1. And this generally is just the right size when I render it out, so that it's not too small that we sort of lose our quality like anti-aliasing, but it's big enough as well so that we can still, it's not too big that it's going off the edges of the screen. It is going off the edges a bit here on the sides, but not so much that we're rendering wasted space. So here you can see it's 11 seconds and it looks terrible. Now we're going to get into the actual light. Here you can see I have three entrances into this room. I have a window here at the back, I have a window here at the top, and then I also have my sliding doors on the sides here. Right there. And I'm going to go and hide these 2 walls because they're going to get in the way. So I have this back wall over here, and then I also have this wall on the side over here. Now, So first we're gonna add in our physical light. Boom, there we have our physical light. I'm just gonna move it into my environment section there, so it's nice and ordered and neat. The reason why I have them ordered like this is because I have them in layers and stuff, so if I want to turn things off, I can always just fiddle with them here, and just makes life a lot easier that way. So I can remove the environment if I want to and all that stuff. But we're gonna add in our environment. Now you'll see this object is in the way, the table's in the way of the actual physical light. So if we try and rotate it and stuff, we can't see it that well. Now, if you wanna, usually what you do is you move it up, then you rotate it and stuff. But the thing is, if you choose a different preset, it'll reset back to the bottom. So what I did is I grouped it into a null. Control G. No, what am I doing? I forgot how to put it in a null. Right click, group objects. And then what I did is I moved that null up. So now, even if I go and rotate it and stuff like this, and then I choose a new preset, it'll just rotate in the same spot. It won't move back under the table and annoy me. So what I did is I used a preset. I rendered out all these presets, all at 50 of them. I think there's 50 of them in here. I rendered out all of them, and then I numbered them. So I know number 6 is sky, which is over this one. Not sky, it's nighttime, which is this one. I still haven't done some nighttime renders of the scene, but I'm gonna do that and they'll look really nice. But what I use is number 15, which is this one over here. If you want to find the exact one I'm using, just count 3 rows down and then 3 to the right. So you'll count 3, 6, 9, 12, and then 15, and you'll hit this one right here. This is the one I'm using. This is all inside of Cinema 4D, no plugins, nothing like that. So you won't need any of that. I did use plugins, however, for the plants, and I used it for something else as well, I forgot. But that doesn't really matter, I guess, because it's not actually in the scene. I removed it for optimization purposes. Anyways, so now you have your sky, and you want your sun to actually hit inside the room in the right direction. Right now you'll see, if I switch to something like lines, you'll see that there's this green line over here. This is basically the way the sun is facing. If this green line is pointing down directly like this, the sun is coming directly down and hitting this table from basically a 90-degree angle. Now we want to direct the sun in the right direction, because the way the sun enters this room is very important. What I did is I made the sun hit this couch over here. I made it come through the sky and hit the wall over here, and it also hit this decoration piece over here. And then it also came from the back through this window. There's a window here. And then it came and hit the couch, and it also hit the plant, and then hit some of the slabs here. And when it does things like that, it gives these things what I like to call them breaks, where it basically hits different edges of the room, like corners of the room, and different objects and stuff, and it really add some definition into your scene, and it can really change your scene just by the direction your sun's facing. So to get that sort of effect, we want to make sure that this line over here is pointing towards this couch in the right direction. So we're going to rotate the sky just this way, and whoops, and then we're going to rotate it back this way, and then we're going to rotate it down like this. So now the sun is coming down at a lower angle. It's not coming down from a high angle, and now it will hit some of this painting instead of missing the painting and hitting just the couch. Give the painting some definition. So if we render this out over here, again I'm using Team Render, so mine might go a bit faster than yours. My CPU is a bit old, and my laptop CPU is very old, so it could go the same speed as yours, or yours could go even faster than mine. And now you'll see where the sun's hitting, it's hitting the couch over here, but I also wanted to hit this painting a bit, and there's no plant there, so you can't actually see it hitting there. So I'm just going to rotate this a bit that way. Now if I render this out, it should just hit the painting, which is what I want. There, now we have closer to what my final render looked like in terms of my lighting direction. Now we're going to start making things look pretty. We're going to go and add in ambient occlusion. We don't need to change anything there. Global illumination, this is the big factor in our scene. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth in everything because I could spend ages and ages talking about this. If you want some in-depth explanations, just go to your help menu, right click anything in the global illumination settings, click show help. Here they explain everything so well, and they'll give you tips and tricks and stuff that I don't even understand that well yet, and they'll help you so much. But I'm going to explain everything that I'm doing in this tutorial, but I'm not going to explain what everything is used for, because that'll just take way too long. So I use irradiance cache for my final renders. Very rare occasions I've used QMC, and I've actually regretted it. Irradiance cache is a lot faster. The problem with irradiance caches is you'll get these things called splotchinesses and light circles and all sorts of things that you'll run into. But there are ways of fixing that without immediately switching to QMC and then having extremely long render times. So I'm going to go and click custom accuracy, no, custom sample count. We're going to leave that on 64. And then we're going to change our record density to preview and turn up the smoothing to 100%. Then we're going to see what that looks like. And remember to save your scene. I just saved it by hitting Control S. And in rare occasions, you want to save as incremental if your scenes tend to crash and stuff like that. Just every once in a while. It's a good safety precaution to have. Now you'll see how global illumination instantly made my scene look better. Take into account that my textures and stuff are also making my scene look pretty nice. I spent a long time making the scene. I didn't do this in 5 minutes. And I also took into account colors and all sorts of things that a lot of compositing homework, basically, which have nothing to do with 3D is what made this 3D scene look nice. So here we have our scene. You'll see there's some grain over here in our shadows. Here's the splotchiness that I was talking about, and you'll see these light squares. You get light circles, light squares, splotchinesses, all sorts of things you'll run into. But you'll see these light squares. Generally, to fix that, you go into your record density and bump this all the way up to high. And then you'll see a lot of that go away. But what I found is that really increases your render time. So I'm going to do a render test now, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This will it'll make your renders take so long. Now, I'm going to try and fix that without having to do that. I'm going to go and add in light mapping. What light mapping does is it basically, it makes your scene brighter if you want the most basic example, but all the areas which is not directly facing the camera, it'll calculate all the light bounces that go here. There's supposed to be a wall here, which I hid at the start of this tutorial. I can unhide it if you want to see it. There's the wall. So the light will come through, let's say, this door. It'll hit this wall, then it'll bounce against this wall over here. Then it'll bounce against the back wall, and then it'll hit the back of this couch, and it'll make the back of the couch a little bit brighter. That's basically how light mapping works. You'll see how long this is taking already, and it's not even started rendering yet. It's just doing the GR calculations. So that's what light mapping does, and it generally, for interior renders, makes your scene a lot brighter, which is generally a good thing. So I'm gonna go and tick that. So I ticked that on just now, and we're gonna try and get rid of the splotchiness and stuff through using light mapping. Ooh, you see the splotchiness is actually not even gone. Now, if it's still not gone, you want to ramp up your sample count by a lot, and that's where your render times really start to fault. But you'll see how we're already at 1 minute and 40 seconds. And if you go and Google this, you'll see that people tell you to turn up your record density, and that is the problem, but it also has to work with your sample count as well. You need to turn this up by a lot as well, maybe 500 or 1,000 even. and you'll see how our render time is almost double. Now I'm going to get rid of this by adding light mapping, and then in my light mapping settings, I'm just going to change this to fixed. We're going to do a render test, and you'll see how my scene's a lot brighter, and a lot of the bad stuff will go away. Now your maximum depth here is basically your brightness of your light mapping. If you change this to 32, it'll be a bit brighter. Change this to 16, which is the default, it'll be brighter. It'll be bright, and if you change this to 1, it'll be less bright than the light mapping is. So this is basically a brightness setting, so you can play around with this and see how you want it to turn out. Oh, my throat is getting sore. Now, my camera settings, which has a big deal, it has a big impact to why my scene is also a bit bright. My f-stop, I changed it from 8 to 5.6. I ticked on exposure and I changed that to 400, so my scene is generally brighter than it should be. And also in my lens distortion, I changed that to 0.5% for a bit of realism, and I also changed my vignette intensity to 20%. Just for very, very minor realism thingies that I liked to add on to my scene. If you want a very nice explanation of how to make your scene look nice, I'm actually going to go find this for you. I'm remembering all these things I'm supposed to tell you, and I'm trying not to spit them out randomly. I'm trying to do it all in order. So first we're going to go into portals. I'll explain why I typed that in, but here, if you type in portals and you click this lighting GI portals here, they explain what you can do to make your scene look very nice. Basically go through in depth. They start off with a scene like this, a very dark scene, and it comes out very nice. Portals, hang on, I'm going to explain that now. First, you'll see how the scene has become a lot brighter, and you'll see how a lot of this stuff is gone. It's basically replaced with grain, and the grain we can control in our physical settings over here, which we haven't gotten into yet. Let me see how much time I have. 18 minutes. Okay, I need to speed this up a tiny bit. So you can replace that with your grain settings, and you'll see how these areas over here, these dark areas, have become a lot brighter, and that's because of all the light bounces in your room, and that's all to do with light mapping. Now, GI portals, I have these things called GI portals placed in all the fittings on all the entrances where the light enters my room. Over here you'll see there's one here, then there's one here which is just in front of the glass. The glass is over here, and then there's your GI portal in front of it. There's another one here in front of this glass over here, and then there's another one here and the entrance of this door here. And then there's one here at the back of this. This is where the window fits. GI portals, if you want to create a GI portal, you basically, I'll explain what it's actually for, but first, you basically just create a plane, then you add a new material, you untick color and reflectance, you tick transparency, you go to illumination, tick GI portal, and then you right click, go show help and explain, and then I'll explain what GI portals are for. Now here you'll see it doesn't really explain much at all. So to fix that, you want to go type in portal into there, and then here you'll see GI portals function and placement. Here they explain what it's for, why it's useful. It basically makes your scene look a lot better, and sometimes make your scene render faster, and you can also control the lights, your lighting sometimes through them. But if you want a good explanation, just go to them. I'm not going to explain it because I don't understand it fully yet, so I feel like I would be doing you a disservice to give you false information on them. But I use them and they work well for me. I don't fully know how to use them properly, but I do use them, and that actually did influence my scene quite a bit. So you want to go look up that. And then now, before we get rid of our grain and make our scene look nice, first what we're going to do, you'll see our scene has already become, through a few renders, our scene's become so much better. Here we're getting really close to what we want, besides all the grainy issues. But you'll see how all of this bad stuff is cleared up just by adding light mapping and going into interpolation method and clicking fixed. The grain, I said we'll fix. what we're going to go and add next is color mapping. Color mapping there. Now, if you're seeing this too dark, in this case I want it a bit brighter, you want to turn up your dark multiplier, that will make the dark parts brighter. If you turn up your bright multiplier, it'll make the bright parts darker, and generally I don't touch that at all. It'll just mess up my scene and make it very overly contrasted. So here I've turned up my dark multiplier by 3, and you'll also notice in the final render these overexposed areas won't be so overexposed, and the underexposed areas won't be so underexposed. And that has to do with this exponential setting here. If you go right click show help, they'll explain it all. But it basically makes your scene a bit more realistic, because that's how a lot of real life settings are. You don't get these extremely overexposed areas. And if you want to fix that, you can go and fix that in After Effects afterward, but I do recommend having this ticked. And then you'll see how here, well, firstly, the scene's a lot brighter. All the dark areas are a lot brighter. That has to do with the dark multiplier. See how the scenes become a lot brighter. This is too much for me, so I'll just turn this down to 2. It's a bit too bright. And you'll see here how these overexposed areas there, and there are now not so overexposed. Now, this may be too much for you, so in After Effects, you can always go and fix that. I'll get into my compositing file soon, but not yet. But you'll see how I fix it a bit here in After Effects. So I've turned this down to 2 because it's a bit too bright, and now we're also going to go and fix our graininess. So here there's grain in the corners. That has to do with the ambient occlusion. So to fix that grain, we're going to turn ambient occlusion up to 3. You generally want to just increase these increments up by 1. I know turning it up to 3 won't fix it, but I'm trying to show you why I'm turning it up like that. So we're going to turn it up to 3 by 1, and then you'll see shadowy areas as well. Like here are also a bit grainy, and here it's also a bit grainy, so we're going to increase that up by 1 as well. We're going to do a render, okay, I'm not going to explain all of these settings because it's going to take too long. Just go right click show help. Generally, I do not touch any of these settings. The only thing I do change is I turn my shading subdivisions up to 4, and I turn this threshold down to 5. This is basically your anti-aliasing, your colors, your textures. That's where you control these settings. Your lighting and your depth of field is generally controlled here. The graininess of that. Don't be mistaking this depth of field. If you take this on and you change this blurriness subdivision, that won't change anything. So this blurriness has to do with your textures and things like that. That's what changes that. But if you want to increase your depth of field quality, you change these sampling subdivisions here. As I said, if you go right click show help, you'll see how everything works in here. And now you'll instantly see my scene's a bit darker because I turned my color mapping down to 2, and you'll see that there's a tiny bit less grain, not that much though. So we're going to turn our ambient occlusion up to 4, and here there's still some grain here which has to do with our shadows, so we're going to turn this up to 4 as well. I'm going to do out a render, and we'll see what this looks like. Now I'm going to go into my compositing file while I let this render out. You'll see we're still at like 1 minute renders here, so it's pretty good. In my compositing file, all I really have is this background layer, which is my sky. Then I have this beach, which is an image, and I also have some levels added on top of it to create a bit of realism. And then I have my image over here. I alphaed out the sky so you can't see it, and then I can go and composite it with a straight alpha on top in After Effects. And then I also have 2 unsharp masks to make it a bit sharper. You'll see in these areas up here how it makes an effect. Boom, there's a lot sharper. And here in the plant you'll see how it's a lot sharper, there's a lot more detail and stuff like that. And I think it sort of messes it up here, but you know, I can always go and fix that later. Yeah, I think I need to fix this because it sort of ruins the image there. That's something I didn't notice. Okay, I need to go fix that later. I need to remind myself about that. Then my adjustment layer, which is basically my color correction layer, I have a curves adjustment. Let me turn these two off. A curves adjustment here adds a bit of contrast into the image, and also these, see these underexposed areas here. I fixed that a bit there. And then I have a CC toner at 75%, which gives, for me, it was more of an artistic choice, and it was also a bit of a realism choice, to add a bit of brownish, because you see the floor is very brown and your scene is not going to be blue when you have a lot of brown in your actual room. The brownness will be reflecting all over the place and stuff, so that's why I did that. And then I added some brightness and contrast to give it a bit more brightness and some contrast here, also fixing the exposure areas over there, which made my scene. And then my different views here, I have a depth map controlled by an RPF file and some blurs. For my depth of field, here I have my camera lens blur using my depth composition to control that with, and I masked out these excuse me, these flowers over here, because as you can see, they're a bit in the way and I don't want these to be blurred because that would look wrong. So in my third view here, you'll see here again, I have a depth map in here, and this one I just used a shape layer and I used a gradient to create this one, because all I really needed was the floor and this couch to be blurred out. And then my fourth view here, this one is controlled by an RPF file with a 3D channel extract on top of that. And that's how I got this depth of field effect to blur out the background and focus on this knife thingy here. And you can see a bit of the book and stuff like that. But back into our 3D scene. Here you see a lot of the grain is already removed. Here it's very grainy, there the grain is gone. That is to do with the shadows in this area, and here you'll see a lot of the grain is removed because of our ambient occlusion. We've turned that up. Now here, I don't know if you can see it because I'm recording, you might not be able to see it, but there are these light circles sort of appearing. I notice it, I don't think you can, but there's like a sort of a line-ish there and kind of a line there. I don't think you can see it because I'm recording and it's not like, but yeah. But if you do get these light circles, turn up your global illumination, turn up your samples. I crank it up to 500. In my final render I actually used 600, and then when I still saw those light circles I cranked it up to 1000 and that fixed it. If that doesn't fix it, then it has to do with your record density. You might want to Google how to do that. But this is basically my final render for my scene. As you can see here, this is what my final render looked like. Do they look the same? If I turn off all these effects. Oops, wrong one. I'm missing something. I feel like there's more contrast in this one. Let me see. Let me go into my old settings and see. Ooh, that's why. In my actual final render, my light mapping is actually set to 1 because I wanted those areas to be brighter, but I didn't want them to be too bright. And for me, they're too bright. My color mapping is actually set to 4. Effect background. And I also have hair render, which has to do with the carpet that's in the middle there, which we don't have in here. But we will see what it looks like when we turn our light mapping down to 1. We don't need to go into that. That will be getting a bit advanced and off topic. But that's pretty much what made this scene. I'm going to do some night renders with this one over here, and then I'm going to go and upload those onto my website, which is here. This is basically my portfolio. I've been doing a lot of projects which I haven't been showing anyone at all. I used to post things on YouTube and that ended, and now I'm putting them on my portfolio, because people told me I should get one. So I got one because I have all these things sitting on my computer that never see the day of light, and this project is actually one of them, and this is one of the first ones which I'm putting on my portfolio, and now I'm doing this explanation for it. So how much are we doing on time? 31 minutes. Wow. I've actually done this tutorial twice before, and those ones took an hour long, so we're doing very well. The reason why I cancelled them is because I felt like I was talking too much about myself and I wasn't adding value. The whole point of this thing in the first place was so that I can explain it to you, because often I find that people do all these cool things to do with 3D and they never show anyone how they did it. And I didn't want to be one of those guys. I wanted to show you guys so you guys can learn as well. But generally, when I talk about 3D, I get so excited and I get off topic because not a lot of people that I know about 3D stuff. So, but yeah, here we're doing very well on time. So we're going to see this render and see how this turned out. You'll see it's a bit darker because of the light mapping has gone down. I think now we've gotten really close to what, yeah. Now it's very close to what we're seeing in our final render. Yeah, I think that's all really. If you want to hide this background, I've struggled with this physical sky not disappearing. If you want to hide the background like I did so you can go and composite it, go and right click, Cinema 4D tags, compositing, untick scene by camera. If you have things like windows and GI portals and stuff that are in front of it, which are transparent objects, untick scene by transparency, and then that will work afterwards as well. And then I also went PNG, alpha channel, straight alpha, and then rendered out. There was a stage when I was using multipasses and all sorts of stuff like that, but I found out that that's unnecessary unless I'm doing animation, which I'm not. My lips are getting dry, I need to drink some water. But those are pretty much all the settings that I used for this render, really. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can comment on YouTube and I'll be happy to help. I think I've explained everything that's necessary. I think if I go on too much, then I'll just be rambling on about things that have nothing to do with the scene. Yeah, I'm gonna wait for this render to come out so you can see what it looks like. Let me just take these back on and then save this file and close it. Okay, now we see what this final render looks like. After this, it has to do with compositing, and that's all up to you and what you want to do with your scene. It really depends. I forgot what I changed. Oh yeah, I removed the background. Why did I re-render this just to do that? But anyway, that is our scene file and how I did this lighting with just one physical light. I didn't go too in depth with the global illumination settings, mostly because I don't understand it fully myself, and it's just so much to learn on that section to be summed up into one video. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Go check out my portfolio, see what you guys think. There should be more projects on there by the time this is up. Don't know when I'll upload this, to be honest. And you can also check my Instagram. I don't post any 3D stuff on there yet, but I do sometimes do it in my stories. But in the future, I do plan to start posting 3D stuff on there. I've already switched that to a business account instead of just a normal personalized profile, and I'm going to start mixing up my hiking stuff with my 3D stuff, because right now it's just 3D stuff. And that's pretty much all. If you guys liked this, let me know. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be happy to help. And yeah, I will see you guys on my next video. Goodbye.